Here's a closer look at the mechanism on top. So that is in the unlocked position. The aluminium bars, so there's one there, one there, one there and one there, they're attached here to this point here, this rivet here. The copper ones, they're there, there and there. They're attached to this side of this wheel, and this wheel is attached via a part under there to this rivet as well. So there's 4 points here. One drives directly this bolt, the other one drives this bolt via this wheel. So if I turn it, you can see that the aluminium bolt here is going up and down just with this rivet here. Nothing much happening there, that's pretty simple. The copper one, however, as this goes backwards, it pulls here on this wheel, which pushes that. So as this moves that way, the copper bolt moves that way, and that happens 4 times around the wheel. And that's basically it. The black acrylic underneath is just for decoration. I changed it slightly, the design. These blocks are larger than the original, and the original had the blocks in the sort of mounted on the side of these bits here, which means that I wouldn't be able to get, I mean if they were mounted on there, I wouldn't be able to get the top out. So I changed that a little bit to make it, well, they are larger and also slightly different. But apart from that, this is very similar to the original. And it's quite a smooth operation. Once you tune it, do a bit of fettling, you can get it moving pretty nicely, and that's really down to the amount of slack you've got in the slots in these blocks. So I do have some leftover parts here, and that makes it a bit easier to see some of the bits and bobs, because you can't really see them when it's assembled like this. So underneath there is this part, and that part goes on that rivet there and then attaches to a rivet here on this wheel, and that is what's pulling the wheel as this moves left and right. The wheel itself looks like this, and this is just decorative, as are these parts. The real important bit is here, here and the centre, which goes on the rivet. In fact, I think that's a faulty part. The centre hole isn't the correct size there. These blocks here I actually made, well there's one here, this is a block, that's what they look like. There's a slot here for the bolt to run in, and some screws on the bottom which go through the plate that this is mounted on, and that's what actually secures them to the plate. And it's made out of separate parts. There's a lower part, an upper part and a spacer on one of them. Because the bolts, if you look at the bolts, the aluminium one is underneath the copper one, they're at different heights. Because of that I have to put the slot at different heights, so I have a spacer and different arrangement of slot for the copper and the aluminium. That's just so that they've got a bit of clearance and they ride correctly. What else? So that's the slot part. Again, these are all cut on the 30-20, just very slowly with WD-40 as cutting fluid. Seems to work quite well, and a 1mm cutter. So you can't really go very fast with a 1mm cutter because you'll break it, but it does mean that you have enough sort of detail so you can get in and do these corners. They're all 1mm, well no, they're 0.5mm radius. So it's all 1mm cutter will give you enough detail for all these parts without having to get in there and do any sort of further work on it other than cleaning it up. These pivots are dome head rivets, and I make those from copper dome head rivets. I cut them to length, drill a hole in the end. This one's off centre, so I didn't use it. And then I tap that hole, and then I can put a machine screw in, and that then holds whatever is on this rivet securely. Now it turns out that when you look at the mechanism, you don't really have a lot of space in there, so all the elements are actually arranged at various heights using these aluminium spacers. So I make those on the lathe, and they're designed, I mean there's various different thicknesses, so really thin ones and longer ones. They're designed to hold all the wheels and the parts and so on at the right heights, and I found that it was getting a bit tight in there, so what I had to do was take these hex head machine screws, and actually on the lathe I took the head down to about 1 millimetre. So the head is now 1 millimetre thick, and then I polished the end because I just felt like polishing the end. No one's ever going to see it, it's underneath these rivets, and that way I managed to get enough height to stack all the spacers and lock rods and wheels in the height that was available for the mechanism. So I didn't want anything protruding really above this sort of level here, and nothing really does. Some of it comes pretty close, but I have sort of succeeded there. I didn't want this mechanism poking out the top. So I've also had to make some very thin washers. This is made from I think it's 0.2 or 3 millimeter stainless steel. These were hand cut. This is a hand cut one from early on. I actually just cut those on the 3020 now CNC machine. The gears on the side, they're held on with these, and these are parts that I machined on the lathe. They're really a sort of flat top rivet, and that matches the original. They didn't use dome head rivets there, they used some sort of flat part. I'm not entirely sure what it was made of, but mine are made of brass. So I make these and then polish them, and that's what holds the gears on the side there. When you're assembling this, it gets a little bit tricky, because what you need to do is actually put rivets in and put spacers in underneath the parts sometimes. Sometimes you want to adjust something or whatever. So I did end up with these these tools that I made, and they're designed to catch hold of the spacers, and then you can go in underneath and actually put something into the mechanism. And I made a longer one here. They're just cheap tweezers, which really are rubbish tweezers because they're so soft, but they're quite handy because you can put whatever end you want on there, and then you can make your tool for assembling this mechanism. While I was making this, I must have taken this apart and reassembled it, I don't know, 10-20 times, maybe more, because I was really sort of half designing things as I went along, so it took quite a while, and having tools like that sped things up, and in some cases actually made it possible. There's various things, like even if you put these wheels here, the smaller ones, on first, you do have to put the top wheel on, and then to do that you need to get to the centre and put the spacer that's in there that holds the top wheel up. You have to put that in somehow, and it is very tricky. If you just place it there and put the wheel on, you find you've dislodged it and you can't get through and all sorts of things. But using these tools makes it a lot easier.